Okay, I came here to win. I'm coming for the title, yeah, this is the time. When friends become your rivals, yeah, I've been on my grind. All I know is been survival, now it's my time to shine. I made it to the finals, I've been going hard, I ain't worried.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Real with Ray podcast. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications every time we release one. Please share it with a friend, sister, brother, cousin, and let's get started with this next episode. Let's go! Welcome to Real with Ray. I'm super excited for this podcast. I have a highly decorated law enforcement officer, retired now, podcast host, mental health coach. Just want to dive into all those things. So I'm super excited to introduce Mr. Aaron Smith. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
So Aaron, I'll tell you a real quick backstory of what I know of you, because we don't know each other very well. Just, our kids go to the same school, or one of them, I actually joked with Connor about that. I said that, Connor went to a public school. You guys loved his little brother more and sent him to private school, invested in him more.
That was their choice. That was their choice. We should have forced him to stay in the Christian school, but we didn't. Free will, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I joke with him about that. And funny because, we used to live where you live, I live down the street. So I'd see you once in a while, and boys were really little, so I have memories of just seeing them out in the yard playing. But it'd be funny because I'd drive by your house and I'd slow down and be like, I don't want him to grab my plates and pull me over later because I drove by his house fast.
Yeah.
So these stupid things that we do, us non-officers,
right,
and would see you. And so I remember seeing you working out at the Y back in the day. And so I've seen you around for a long time, and was really interested and excited to have you on. And then had listened to your podcast. I saw where Eric Thomas is one of my favorite motivational speakers, and I saw a picture with you and him at one time. So, oh my gosh, so I got to check out what this guy's doing.
Yeah.
So been where you didn't know, following what you were doing with stuff for some time. So super excited to have you on and be able to kind of dig into your life and your background. So appreciate you coming on so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, ask away.
All right, awesome.
There's a lot to it.
Well, okay, so what I know of you was you're an ex-Marine. You're pretty young when you went in the Marines?
Yeah, right. Like 3 weeks out of high school, I was in San Diego, California, standing on the yellow footprints. Yeah.
And then spent 4 years in the Marines?
Spent a couple, I can't remember the time to be specific. It was a long time ago. Some active duty time, and then I ended up finishing out some time in the reserves.
Okay.
So between the two, it was 3.5, 4 years, some active duty time. My mom at the time had gotten sick. I'm an only child, so they let me kind of do a lat move, what they call a lat move, and come out of the reserve, or go into the reserves to finish out some of that time so I could be home. And
then after that, how long was it after your time in the Marines? And then let me ask you this: did you were a police officer first, and then became a detective later on in your career? So kind of fast forwarding through a little bit. But I want to get back to: is that something you always knew you wanted to do as a kid?
I think so. I mean, every little boy plays with police cars and fire trucks and all that stuff, right? So I knew probably about, I would say, my sophomore year in high school. They had what they call an Explorer program. They brought it back where you could, as high school students, it was kind of a career path. You could go and check out the police department, and you could do ride-alongs, and you saw how all that stuff worked, and I was hooked. I saw the cop cars and the way that they, the kind of adrenaline and the high-speed stuff, and then also at the same time, the way that I saw the officers interact with each other. Truly family, right? They were super tight, super close. And so that was a draw to that career path right out of high school into the military. And then from there, it was when I came home from the military, I knew that I wanted to go in law enforcement. So I jumped right into Kellogg Community College here locally. And at the time, they didn't have it set up like an academy like you typically think. It's a 2-year program, an associate's in criminal justice, and you take what they call tracking classes, which meant you had to take some of those and within a 2-year time frame. Kind of weird how to explain it, but I jammed into college, took 24 credit hours per semester. Knew I just wanted to get hired somewhere as a police officer. and was blessed enough to get into Battle Creek. At the time, it was very hard to get a job in a bigger department like that. Being a police officer was like the thing to do, you know, and they were looking for kids with 4-year degrees. I didn't have that. I tested with probably close to 200 people. They were going to hire 5 of us. So a guy with a 2-year degree to get in, it was all like just a blessing to be able to have that as my first landing spot right out of the academy, a department the size of Battle Creek. So that's kind of how I ended up in Battle Creek. So
so you're an only child. I didn't know that. So how did your family feel, you being an only child going into a career path like that? Were they supportive or were they hesitant about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was just pretty much my mom, and she obviously was scared. Everybody's ignorant going into it, but you just hear of the dangers, and you know that's one of those things. But super supportive, knowing that that's what I wanted to do. So there's really no stopping it. So nobody in my family in law enforcement, so it was just like, let's dive in and go for it. So the support was absolutely there. Just the fear behind it, of course, right? So, yeah.
That's awesome. And then how long were you an officer? And then tell me how your career escalated throughout your time, or how you ranked up. Or
yeah, so you get hired, you obviously go through training, and I spent 12 years as a road patrol officer. And then we have a gang suppression unit, which is kind of a specialized unit that just goes out and deals with, you know, gun violence and things like that. So I did 11 or 12 years as a road patrol officer, answering 911 calls for service, responding to things like that. Spent a year in the gang suppression unit, loved it to death. I mean, we were a really tight group. You don't have to take barking dog calls and property dispute calls and things like that. It was just go out there and be proactive. And then at the time, being that and on the tactical team and doing sniper unit stuff and being a driving instructor, I mean, I had my plate so full. My boys were getting to the age where, all right, they're involved in sports, rocket football, basketball, and all that. And I'm like, okay, I can't work in the gang unit and be working midnight to 8 a.m. one week, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. the next week, and then be there for the kids. And I knew that I wanted to be very active in their lives with sports and things like that. So I was kind of like, well, I don't really want to leave the gang unit, but I need to find a different path that's going to allow me to be with the kids. So they have a promotional process, right? They announce it like, hey, we're going to be testing for detective. They give you a bunch of books. You got to study. You got to take a written test, and then you go on like interview boards, and then they kind of score you out. And then wherever you land on that score, like, okay, we're going to promote 2 detectives from this process. They'll test every 2 years. We're going to promote 2 off of this list. And I made it like 2nd or 3rd on the list. Got promoted to detective, and then spent the last, obviously, 12 years in the detective bureau, minus all the other special assignment stuff I still had my hands in. Along the way. So being a detective, I could still be on the tactical team. I could still be a firearms instructor and do all of that stuff. So that being in the detective bureau, I thought, well, for the most part, allowed me to be able to coach the kids and to be there for their events and things like that. So that's how that process works.
Awesome. And then you've been married. I was stalking you on Facebook. I think you guys are 25 years. Is that correct?
26.
26 years that you've been married.
Yeah.
So, so you met your wife early on in your career of law enforcement, and how did she feel about that as a career?
So we were married before I got hired at the police department. So we got married. I still had like 1 semester left of school. She knew what I wanted to do. She's from another country, so she doesn't understand the culture and police work here, but knows that it's dangerous, knows what's involved, but you never really know until you get involved. You can hear all this stuff, but until you sit in it and go through it. So it was pretty intense, I'm sure, for her, because I was very proactive. I worked midnight shift. We didn't have cell phones and things like that back then, so I'd go to work on midnights, you know, and we were out running the streets, getting into whatever we could. Within, like, I would say a year, I think the first thing that really hit home was about a year into the job. My wife and I had gone on vacation up north. No cell phones and all that stuff. So I'm trying to put that picture into people's minds now. We had an officer shot on a call up in the north side of town. And I'm on phone trying to figure out like what's going on, calling my buddies back. So when he was shot, it was in the district that I work, on the shift that I work. One of the guys that was with him when he was shot was working in my place that night. And they went through that whole thing. And I think for both my wife and I, we were like, all right, this is the real deal. And then of course, over the years, you know, more and more stuff, but she's always been super supportive, you know, never no, don't go do that. Or, hey, I think it's time for you to get off the tactical team, or I think you need to slow down. She just rolled with it and supported everything that I did.
What country is she from?
She's from South Africa.
South Africa.
Yeah, Cape Town, South Africa.
How did you guys meet?
So she came over here back when she came over to the States. She had just gotten out of her schooling. There was a real shortage of physical therapists here in the United States. So it's kind of one of those recruiting gigs, like, hey, go to the United States and work for a couple years and then get the experience or whatever. So she landed in Battle Creek, of all places, and my grandfather, I was really, really close with my grandpa and grandma. So my grandfather had a hip replacement surgery, and she happened to be his physical therapist. And, you know, he called me one time and he says, hey, you gotta get up here and visit me. I got this, of course, he was in his mid-80s at the time. I got this cute little nurse up here. You got to meet her. And I'm like, Grandpa, like I was in the academy. I had my path set out. I'm like, I'm not messing with any girls right now. I don't have the time. So, of course, I went up there and she comes bopping in this little accent and, you know, really proper and all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? She's got her career set up. She's mature. She doesn't play. I mean, all of that was kind of going at the same time. So I had kind of chatted with her. Again, no cell phones. So I'm like, I'm going to give this a shot, right? So back in those days, I had to like cold call her. Called her at work. All I knew is that she worked up there. So I was working at a print shop at the time. I'm like, I might as well call and ask this gal out on a date. Called her up. I'm like, hey, is Clarissa Abrams there? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. She gets on the phone and I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Vincent Banks's grandson. That I was up there the other day. And she's like, yeah. And I said, I just wondering if you'd like to go out to dinner sometime. Well, she kind of put me on hold. She's like, I'll have to think about it. You know, it wasn't a yes or a no. It was like, maybe, right? I'm like, rats, click. So I had the gumption to call back. We set up a date. Our very first date was at Applebee's at the mall here in Battle Creek.
Awesome.
That's when the mall was like happening.
Yeah.
So we went out on a date and we're sitting there doing our thing and she's waving to some people over in the corner. And I'm like, all right, you know some people. Well, come to find out, it was her coworkers. They were sent as like kind of like spies to make sure. And at the time, I was kind of like, what the heck, man? But another country doesn't know the area, so they hooked her up. And one date led to another, and we started courting. And I asked her to marry me probably about a year or so later. I can't remember. It's been a long time. So that's how we met. Yeah,
That's a great story.
In a nutshell. So yeah,
cool.
We've been at it ever since. The ups and downs and everything in between.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love that story. All right, so you got promoted to detective, and so after you said about 13 years into it?
Yeah, roughly about 12, 13 years.
Can you tell me, tell me about like your first day as a detective. You get this new promotion, you go in, and also tell me like how did that differ from the other jobs that you had as an officer?
Yeah, so when I got promoted, it was like cool, right? You get called in the chief's office, he hands you a badge, and all your buddies are there. They kind of try to sneak attack you, like it's a surprise. And then I remember my first day in there. Now I was the new guy, right? My seniority had dropped. All the detectives at the time had a lot of seniority, so going back to being kind of a new guy. And it was just kind of weird because I had gone from gang unit where there's 5 or 6 of us working on 1 or 2 projects to now you're sitting there in a cubicle not knowing. I didn't know how the doggone fax machine worked. And the sergeant comes over and goes, hey, here's a couple cases. Just call down here. I don't know where to start. I don't know anything. And then from there, I just luckily had some friends in the bureau. I just had to start asking questions. And now I'm by myself, and I have a caseload of anywhere from 8 to 12 cases, from frauds to sexual assaults to child abuse to all that stuff. And then while you're working on that, I'm on call. We got a shooting, we've got a homicide. So real rapidly, I took that 100-mile-an-hour attitude from the gang unit into the detective bureau, never said no, and things went downhill really quick for me. You're now going from making arrests and you're done for the day, your paperwork's in, go home, to now you're dealing with the aftermath of that, the victims, their families, and you are like the last line. You have to run this thing and find answers and find solutions and get them to court, and that whole process after the arrest. It's very daunting and very detailing, and it got piled on me quick, and I really started to change my attitude. From there on out was when things really started taking a turn for me. About 2 years into the detective bureau, it became really, I guess for lack of a better, messed up. It was really affecting me in a lot of different ways. And that, not knowing that you're being troubled and bothered by that stuff, it came out in attitude. You know, I wasn't sleeping. I was getting called out in the middle of the night, just very on edge all the time. All of these things that you just play the victim and say, well, it's because of this, it's because of that. And you're not like, I need to slow down and get some help here. I'm not digging this anymore.
Now, I'm talking to, like, thinking of that, like, do they have, at this time, did they have programs set up for detectives, for officers, for making their awareness of, like, these things happen, or do they have something like that set up?
They do. Most places do. They'll call it an employee assistance program,
Okay.
EAP. And it's like, well, you know, you can go to 5 counseling visits within somebody within that network. And to me, I will say yes and no. It's a way for them to say, yeah, we're helping you, but it's also a box that human resources is checking. Like, oh, hey, we offered help. Now that I'm not in that system anymore, they're junk.
No.
They're junk. Number one, we don't know how to ask for help. We don't know what's going on. And then to go talk to somebody, what does that mean? We're very skeptical of telling anybody that we're having issues or what's going on in the first place, let alone some stranger. Because, I mean, cops think everybody's crazy. So you think, I'm not going to talk to some nut job psychiatrist, psychologist. I'm not going to a shrink. People are going to think, there's this, I guess, a stigma, for lack of a better, of getting that help. But they say that they set stuff up for you, but it's just ineffective.
And one thing, so I imagine this, like, I'll tell you what changed me big time. I was going to coach at St. Phil, and so this was after all of everything that happened with the Catholic Church. There was something that you had to do, this program you had to go. You have to sit. It's like a 3-hour class, maybe longer, and you watch this video, and it's a regular old grandpa-looking guy, and he's talking, and they kind of lure you in. This nice guy, he's telling you what he did and his career, and then they, like, back up the camera, and this guy's in prison, and he was a pedophile. And so you have to take these classes, and there's different things. And it blew my mind. My wife was pregnant at the time for our first daughter, and I'm thankful for it. I mean, it was so uncomfortable, the class, but I was like, my kid will never stay the night anywhere ever.
Right.
You know, I mean, it was traumatic for me, but for me, I feel this is in a good way. I can't imagine being a father and a husband, and your job, the things that you see, going from that and have to be a certain way as an officer and handle these situations, and then going home, and then, you know, even just going out in public of who you might run into, or you know, something like that. Like, how did you deal with that? Like, what was that like, going from your job then as a father, husband, and interacting with the regular world?
I didn't deal with it very well, but I thought it was the only way that I knew how. Just like you said, we'd had some experiences with some people that we were very close with, and that mentored us, that I found out were not on the up and up, and it really damaged my faith and my belief system in that, because it was a criminal case of some people that I was very close with, never saw it coming, and you're dealing with that every single day. So yeah, you watch one video, I'm like, that doesn't surprise me at all. So over time, you just begin to become very jaded, untrusting. Now you have kids, and so that protective mechanism comes up, Like, you're not going over there. You're not going to this side of town. You're not hanging out with this person. Oh, I know their uncle. I arrested their uncle 15 times. They're dope dealers. You're not going anywhere. So finding that balance is extremely hard. And then also shutting off all of that from the time you leave work until you go home, it's almost impossible. But you have to set up tools in place to do that. And I talk about that with officers now, but that affects you. It can't not affect you. You become very jaded. You don't want to go out anywhere. I never had any trouble with anybody on the streets of like, let me catch you off duty. I was always pretty respectful to people, like, hey, you run and we fight, you go to jail, fight's over, right? And I always treated people with respect in that regard. So I was never worried about like, oh, let me catch you off duty. Mine was more of like, society's such a mess. Everybody's just, I don't even want to be around people anymore. So when the boys were small, I literally were like, I'll stay home and change poopy diapers. You go to the grocery stores, right? Now the roles are reversed. I'm like, I want to get out of the house and go to the store. You stay home with these knuckleheads. Yeah. But it was like, I would rather stay home with my boys and change crappy diapers and feed them. You go do the store thing. And you do become very isolated. And then what you start doing is you start getting with just your circle becomes the other people that see things the way you do. And so you're like, hey, man, and that's where we get into a lot of trouble. You become very, very jaded of the world around you.
I can see that for sure. And then the demands on your job plus the demands of your home life, trying to balance both those at the same time gets extremely tough. Yeah. Tell me, what were some of the most challenging parts as a detective in solving a case? Like, what are some of the biggest roadblocks that you'd come up with, like on the job? What were some of the
I think the biggest roadblock, obviously, is if shooting in a homicide, it's the whole don't snitch mentality. Right now, you're responsible for taking this case to court and prosecuting somebody. And I would tell families all the time, victims, parents and stuff, like, I know who shot and killed your son. I need people to come forward and testify in court, and they won't do it. And so, of course, the police always get blamed. Police aren't doing anything. The cops aren't doing anything. They know who killed my son. Yeah, we sure do. There's a process, a legal process. We have to have witnesses to come to court. We know that you were at this party when so-and-so pulled out the gun and shot so-and-so. We need you to, and they won't do it. They won't cooperate at all. So that becomes very, very frustrating. So then your case and your work becomes even harder because you still have to take this to court, but you're missing all of these key witnesses and pieces because of this mentality of they don't want to cooperate. So that becomes very frustrating, right? So then after a while, you're like, oh, I don't care. Oh, you want to go out here and kill each other? Fine by me. That becomes your attitude. And these are people's lives, right? And so after a while, you get that attitude and you become very bitter towards people in general because you're like, oh, okay, you don't want to work with me? I don't really care. Oh. And so your focus becomes like, I'm going to help the people I can. And then, like when it comes to the kids, right? Anybody in the world can understand that, like that's hard to deal with. Kids that get sexually abused, it's out of control. I mean, even working towards the end of my retirement, you'd still have cases come in, and you're like, I would interview somebody that was accused of literally having sex with their grandchild, and I'd go in there and we'd interview him, and I'd have a partner with me, and I'd walk out and I'd go, I don't think he did this. And my partner, whoever it would be a lot younger than me, like, oh man, guilty. My brain still did not want to believe that somebody's capable of doing this. So you miss those cues in an interview of like, yeah, they're guilty as hell. But you always have that, I just can't comprehend that somebody could do this to a child. And so when I came back from being off work, I had enough seniority in the detective bureau at that time, and I just, I was aware enough to say, I'm not dealing with kid cases anymore. I can't do it. I can't sit across from somebody that's able to do that to a child without physically harming them. Yeah. And I was honest with myself, and I was honest with my bosses. Like, I'm going to be very ineffective doing what I'm doing to try to bring this case to justice, because justice for me is a bullet between the eyes. And so they respected that, and that's where you become very hardened and bitter towards people.
Man, I can't even imagine. Can you share with me like one of your most memorable cases and why? Like one that's just like
memorable in terms of like, yay, we did it, or I mean, there's several. And I think that, you know, along the way, you deal with so much that you do bury a lot of that, because it's interesting when I'll talk to people that I've worked with and they'll say, hey, you remember the time down on Fountain Street when da-da-da? I'm like, yeah, I forgot about that. How in the world could you forget about that? You know, and it was some crazy wild thing, but you see so much. And when people ask you, you're kind of like, well, you tell me, you know, what's a big case? I mean, I remember everything from, you know, when I was on the road, we're getting called to a stabbing, and we run over there two doors down from a women's shelter. She's still breathing, and we're watching her take her last breath. And I'm like, I know who her boyfriend is. So I get on the radio, and my boys are like, okay, we know where he lived. They got him into custody, and boom, this person dies in front of you. I remember taking the homicide. One of the things that cracked me, I think, is a homicide of a 4-month-old baby that mom worked third shift, and the mom's boyfriend was home overnight with the baby. Baby cries in the middle of the night. That's what they do. They want to be changed or fed. And that, if you have kids, you know, like sometimes they're colicky and it just like drives you nuts. You got to walk away. He picks this baby up and out of anger throws it on the floor. And so that one was probably I would say my biggest victory, because when I got out there to the scene and I brought him down and I interviewed him, I locked him into a story, right? I had the baby in my arms and I fell down the stairs and da-da-da. There was no way medically to disprove that. The child had been taken over to Kalamazoo. All kinds of brain damage was on machines, right? Keeping her alive. And the neurosurgeon said, there's too much brain damage. We're going to have to pull the plug on this baby. I went over there. I don't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing, but I went over to the hospital and I walked into the room and I'm like watching the baby breathe. And I'm like, I'm the last person that this child's going to see alive. Never had a chance. And they pulled the plug on the child. Had no physical evidence to put this guy in prison. I mean, right? I know he didn't fall down the steps. You're full of crap. So I thought, how am I gonna pull this off? This dude's guilty as hell. This is a little trick that I pulled, and we might have to cut this out or not, but my buddy was working another case, and he had a stack of medical records from a different case. I grabbed those medical records, and I shoved them in an envelope, and I put the baby's name in big Sharpie on the front of it, Bailey Smith. I walked over to the jail because he was still in jail on a warrant, and I brought him out, and I threw that envelope down on the table in front of him. And I sat there for about 20 minutes like, hey, I've talked to these neurosurgeons. I've talked to the top experts in this and that. I said, you're not telling me the truth. You did not fall down the steps. You did this. I started kind of going that route, and I see him nodding in the affirmative. I'm like, listen, man, I've got kids. I get it. Like they scream, like, you don't know what to do. You just lost it. And I start seeing him do this. And I'm like, I got his ass. Got his ass. So I just said, you know, did you pick him up overhead? Did you pick her up overhead? Was it just, and he started showing me how it happened. Got his ass. Got him to confess to it. Otherwise, there would have been no justice for this baby. So I would say out of all of the things in the cases that I've seen and done over the years, I specifically remember that one because there was no way that this guy was going to go to prison for murdering this child. And I kind of tricked him. But I didn't trick him because he knew he did it. Yeah. So that's kind of like a victory to me that I specifically remember.
Man, I can't even remember, man.
Yeah.
I can't even like imagine it.
Yeah,
like,
it's wild.
Like,
but again, you remember those things and you kind of somehow put them away. Then you got to come home and be a dad, a husband. And then you got to find all these other ways to unwind and to shut it off and to be normal. And that's where I didn't know how to handle that, and I ended up where I ended up.
Yeah, so. I was thinking because I kind of remember that story just in the newspaper. And it's like, man, I can't imagine being on. I mean, I know when I've read things in the paper, some of those things, and then I just can't imagine seeing them. You know, like just it's hard for me to wrap my mind around it. You know,
it is, and it's also too like when I tell officers and people like. You know, with my wife, the biggest support, she gets to hear it and then live with that. never, and I talk about this in relationships, people will never understand it because when you are there, you see it, you hear it, you smell it, you touch it, right? You move bodies, you do all of those five senses are involved, which heightens that experience that much more and imprints it that much more in your brain. And that's what can trigger things, you know, PTSDs, like certain sounds or smells and just different stuff like that. But the whole gamut's there. So your senses are just remembering everything. And eventually it's going to catch up to you. I don't care how sweet you are.
Man. So tell me, you told me that you had taken a break at some point. So you were 13 years, around 13 years, patrol officer, then became a detective. And then at what point was it where you're like, I need a break?
It was shortly after, my wife would be able to tell you more than me. It was either after my 17th or 18th year on the job. Again, all of this stuff had been building up. I was in the detective bureau. A lot of it's really hard to not put into words, but I was just going through a go-through. I was an angry person. I couldn't settle down. I didn't have any really bad habits other than, you know, I wasn't a drinker or any vices like that, but my behavior was such, like, I was constantly pissed off at everything and couldn't figure out why. Trouble sleeping, just used to getting called out. You never know when that phone's going to ring in the middle of the night. So the break that I had was pretty much not like, hey, I'm going to take a break. I'll see you guys later. I'll be back in a couple months. It was shortly after dealing with this homicide of this baby. I'd gotten a call to the death of a 4-year-old little girl, and all of this backpack stuff over the years and what I've seen and what I've had to go through and what I've had to deal with. And we get to this house, and this little girl was 4 years old, and she had a really bad medical condition. I don't think she was even expected to make it past infancy, right? So we walk in the house, and every law enforcement has to go to the scene of every death, unless it's in a nursing home or a hospital. Like, by law, an officer has to show up, make sure there's no foul play. So the medical examiner was on their way. The ambulance personnel had cleared the scene, and I walked into this house, and it's just like I see this body of this 4-year-old little girl on the floor. Mom is still like kind of huddling the girl, and I'm like, this is screwed up. Can't really explain it, but I'm just like, so we stand there, and at that point, unfortunately, I had seen a lot of dead children, accidents, SIDS deaths, homicide, things like that. But we did our thing, no foul play, obviously. We leave, go back to the department. I'm like, man, that image is like, this is weird, right? I can't figure it out. I don't know what this means. I don't know what this looks like. But just continuing like all day long, like, man, this little girl, what's this? This is weird. I can't stop thinking about her. That went on for a couple days. With all this other stuff built up, the one thing that I did do is I went to a couple of friends, and I'm like, man, I'm just thinking about this one. This is kind of bothering me. And not in a bad way, but they're like, just go talk to somebody. That's how we help each other out. And I'm like, that ain't it. That ain't going to cut it. So I sat there. I went to work a couple times. Mind you, I had all of this cumulative stuff built up. I was an angry person. And I was like, sat there at my desk probably for a full day. I didn't open my computer. I didn't do any follow-ups. And I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm done with this job. So that had built up for a couple days. I had walked into a buddy of mine's office. I trusted him. And I can't even explain how or why I did this, but I walked in and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm quitting. I'm out of here. And we kind of looked at each other like, what? You know, he had to process it. I had to process it. I said, I'm done. I can't do this job anymore. I'm so sick and tired of it, blah, blah, blah. So we chatted for about 20 minutes. Excuse me. And he goes, well, don't just leave, right? Don't just walk out. You got a pension. You got the health insurance. You got all this stuff. And I said, listen, I don't care, man. I'm done with this job. I can't do it anymore. I hate it. So he finally said, we're going to try to get you on sick and accident. I didn't know what that was. Sick and accident's basically if you tear your ACL off duty, you can still get like 30-40% of your paycheck while you're on light duty. I'm like, I'm not coming back, so whatever. He looked me in the eye and he goes, brother, do it for me. Do it for me. Trust me. I said, all right, for you I will, right? One of our brothers. So I got this paperwork, and I'm like, what do you do? I'm like, I don't know. This isn't a twisted knee. This is a mental health issue, apparently. Take this paperwork, Go to your doctor. They'll fill it out. They'll send it to the city. They'll put you off. You'll still get paid. I'm like, get paid for what? I'm not coming back. He says, quit arguing with me. I called my wife. She was at work, and I said, hey, this is it. I'm done. I'm quitting. I got to get the hell out of here. And she was kind of surprised, but not surprised. She was dealing with me and living with me, so she understood it. She came over. We went to the doctor's office. I walked in as a nurse practitioner. I'd never seen her before. You know, it's the typical, hey there, what brings you in today? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going nuts. I go, I'm quitting my job, this, that, and the other thing. My buddy said something about sick and accident. She said, you know, I was an emergency room nurse for 18 years. She goes, I get it. I get it. You need to go home, take care of yourself. She says, I'll fill this paperwork out for you. Go home. And I was like, oh, wow. You know, so we left there, left the hospital, doctor's office, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did it. Like, I'm quitting work. I never have to put on that badge and gun again. I never have to answer the phone again. And then, like, literally the next minute, panic, like health insurance, pension, money, my kids. What am I going to do? The next minute, you know, William Wallace, freedom. Like, this is it. I don't have to say nothing. Right? So nobody at work knew what was going on. I came into work the next day with some paper boxes and started taking off pictures of the boys and filling up boxes. And, you know, our culture is pretty dark sense of humor, and we're pretty good jokesters. Like, what's up, Smith? You moving cubicles? You know, you heading down the hall? I'm like, no, I quit. I'm done. They're like, what? And so it took him a minute to understand, like, man, he's not BSing. I think he's quitting. And I was just full of rage, right? Picked up my stuff, threw it in my car. I walked into the sergeant's office. I said, I quit. Shook his hand, and he was like, what? Let me know if you need anything. And I was like, F you, I'm out of here. That's how full of anger it was. No, nobody knew. It was AWOL. I got in the car and went home. Like that, that's it. Never stepping foot in the place again. Chief didn't know. Chief of police didn't know. The admin didn't know. Nobody knew, other than a few very close friends of mine. I went home and sat on my couch and threw my box of stuff in front of me. I was like, oh my gosh, now what? You know, and that began the process of things got darker before they got better, obviously. But I had to figure out what in the hell was wrong with me. What happened to me to get to this point? What does all of this mean? What is mental health? What, right? So that began the journey, and it got way darker before it got lighter, for sure.
And how long? So you end up going back at some point. So take me through how long was it that before you went back?
So I was off work for a total of about 7 months. So I'd gone home, and the next day we gotten up, you know, the boys are going to school, and I'm like, hey man, I'll go to the grocery store, honey, I'll cook the food up, you know, and I was kind of ignoring, taking all of it in. Like, I just quit my job after 18 years. This was me. I was, you know, pretty well-respected cop, did all the cool guy stuff, and here I was, like, getting ready to go to Meyer. I'm like, I don't even want to go to Meyer. What if somebody sees me? You know, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think all this. So nobody from the department, one buddy checked up on me. He called me. He said, hey, Smith, how's it going? I'm like, I'm all right. I'm trying to figure this out. And he says, well, you know, you left and nobody knew. I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, if you look in your driveway, that's the police department's car that you have sitting in your driveway. So I need to come and get that. I'm like, all right, bro, no problem. Come pick it up. And he was a good buddy of mine. So we chatted for a little bit. It was several weeks later. I had received a letter from the city of Battle Creek in the mail, opened it up, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically it said, we need you to turn in your police ID and you need to turn in your service weapon. And since this is a smaller town, I'm not going to get into the names and a lot more details, but essentially I ignored the letter. Police department sent a representative over to my house. And even though I knew I was done with police work, there was really something about giving up my police ID and my service weapon. And when I asked about that, it was maybe tongue-in-cheek and kind of joking, but it was the fact that I was, in a roundabout way, told that if I blow my head off, can't be with the city's weapon because of liability, right? That really pissed me off to a degree I can't really explain, to the point where I told this individual to leave my house, gave him my stuff, leave my house. I don't tell the story very often, other than when I'm teaching classes and one-on-one. But after I kicked him out of my house, I went into my bedroom and grabbed my own pistol, And my thinking, and I guess my thought process at the time was, because when you're angry and you don't know what to do, I'm like, I'll show you. This is how gone I was. I'll show you. You come back here and you'll be the one to see my brains against the back of this wall. So I'm standing there, and I don't know how long it was, but I'm like, all right, God, why? Where are you at? I'm a believer. Why are you putting me through this? And some things to this day are still a little bit blurry, like what all went through my brain. But then I finally said, you know what? I know one thing was like, I've been to a lot of suicides in my career, hangings, shootings, overdoses, you jumping off bridges. And I thought, man, the aftermath that leaves. I've got 2 kids and a wife to live for, if nothing else. What does that look like when they find out I took my own life? And then I basically said, this is bullshit. I'm a fighter. I teach my boys, we're winners. I'm going to figure this out. And that was set the gun down, and that was it. I'm going to figure this out. And that's going to be my win in this. So that began the process of this whole mental health, emotional health, and wellness thing. I live about 2 blocks from a city park. I would walk up to the park, I would scream, I would cry, I would pray, I would try to figure all this stuff out. That became like my little spot, because I'm a pacer, probably some OCD. I'd walk around the park, take my dog up there, like, where did this start? And that was kind of the beginning of figuring this whole thing out. So I got into Google. How do you change your thoughts? Why do we think this way? Why do we think that way? Doing research, getting books, watching podcasts. And then I finally started going, okay, my thought process, my thinking is very toxic. That toxic thinking and taking all that trauma on and not recognizing it leads to emotional outbursts. It leads to depression. It leads to anxiety. And then that becomes your behaviors. And I'm like, okay, this is making sense. So how do we reverse that? How do we fix that? And it was really like just the boys at school, mama's at work. I had the whole day, and I just dove in like a doggone professor, reading and writing and journaling and doing all this stuff. Getting into psychology. Do I buy into it? Do I, what's the deal behind it? How does the Bible and God fit into this? And working through that, and like, okay, my thoughts are toxic. What scripture matches up to some of this stuff, right? Romans 12:2, a lot of stuff in, Paul's writings and things like that. Like, I'm going to add that scripture to journaling, to rewiring my thoughts, to see if I can start digging myself out of this path and standing on what I'm talking about. And then in the meantime, being okay with it, and then saying, all right, cool, let me try breathing and different breath work. Well, doesn't stop there. How does breath work affect the nervous system and calm you down? How does stretching and yoga, and I don't mean yoga in the Eastern Hindu, nothing, it's for physical, to stretch the body. How does that affect us? How does, cold plunges and saunas, all of this wellness stuff. And I just became super obsessed with trying to find solutions and answers. About 4 or 5 months probably after being off, the chief of police called me. We knew each other, and we went out to lunch. And I, of course, started having conversations with him. And there was a process. You don't just walk away from a job like that and then walk back in the next day. Went through the whole process. Had a lot of meetings with human resources. My wife came with me, and I hashed it out. At that point, I became very open about what was going on. They'd never had, you're talking about human resources of a decent-sized city. They'd never had a guy just walk out for mental health reasons. They didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to process it. They didn't know what language to use, what's going on with you. I'm like, I don't, here's what's going on with me. What do you want to know? I broke. I snapped. Mentally, I couldn't take it. You want my medical records? I'll sign off on them. You want my shrink's notes? I'll sign off on them. What do you want? I became very open about it, and had some conversations, and they worked their thing to get me back to work. And at that point, I said, I'm setting up some boundaries when I come back to work. I'm doing my job, and I'm going home. I'm not doing SWAT stuff no more. I don't want to teach firearms. I don't want to, all the stuff that shaped my identity, I don't want anything to do with anymore. I need to focus on being a husband and a father and continually working on that stuff. And that's what I did. And I ended up showing back up to work probably like 6 or 7 months later, like walked in one day and everybody's like, hey, we thought you quit. Where you been? What's going on? What the hell, Smith? What'd you do? And I was like, here's what I did. I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't recognizing it. I was burned out to the extreme. I was angry, and I had it. I didn't know what anxiety was. I didn't know what depression was. I didn't know how all this stuff affected us, and now I do. And this is what I did. And within a short period of time, I would say about a couple of months, I started having these younger officers coming to me, pulling me aside, like, hey, man, what do you think about this, right? Sharing stories with me about things they were going through, things that they were able to recognize. And I would give them little tips and advice, and that became more and more, pulling me aside, almost like a peer support group type situation. And so I got with a buddy of mine who was also in the detective bureau. I was in the gang unit with him. He's very good at building classes and doing all that stuff behind the scenes. And I said, dude, I want to build a class. I think what I went through and the way I went about it and some of the tools that I used, I think this can help other people. Built a class, got hooked up with ET, branded it, and here we are. So I've spoke to and taught and trained and coached probably well over 2,000 first responders at this point. Been able to speak at a couple conferences, work with folks one-on-one, and that's how God's used this, man. I couldn't, if 7-8 years ago, God would have sent the angel Gabriel in front of me and said, this is the path you're on, I would have said, nah, you're crazy. That's not me. I'm no mental health guy. I'm the SWAT operator, right? I'm the sniper. I'm this. This was my identity. This is what I want to do. That was my identity. And God had other plans, and I would have never thought that this was the path I was going to be on. And in doing so, it's crazy how that's just become what I'm strictly focused on. Everything from how do we get people better? And then you go into mental health. Well, then it's emotional health. And then it's relationships and everything that's involved. How do we bring that into one big bundle and help not just cops, but all first responders?
And how long ago was that you took that break? How many years ago was it when you hit that wall?
I want to say that was probably right after my work anniversary. It was 2017 or 2018. Because I had come back, started building everything. Our class actually got grant funded by the Battle Creek Community Foundation. That's when we started getting linked in with, helping dispatchers, corrections officers, nurses. Because we in Calhoun County, I'm like, I know everybody. Let's just invite them and see if this thing works. And then COVID shut everything down. So I know it was right around that time. On the coming back, the building the class, and then COVID shutting it down. So I want to say like 2017, 2018.
Okay.
When all that went down.
And then I was listening to one of your podcasts, and so you've now retired, and that was like May, I believe.
March of 24 this year, yeah.
Then I heard one of your podcasts where you were saying that your youngest son was graduating high school, time for you to retire. How had you planned that out? Had that been like a date, or was there another point where you're just like, how did you know when you were done and we're going to retire? Like, how long had you been planning that?
We're 25 and out, so we still have a pension, right? So my 25-year anniversary was March 9th. So coming up, it's weird because we get in this bubble and we always look forward to the next thing. And we're like, I would tell my wife, like, hey, remember, man, in a couple years, Camden's going to be a senior. I'm going to be retiring. Connor's going to be out of college. We're going to have all these major life events. And we're like, okay. And you kind of like put it in the background, and then you turn around and you go, man, that's 3 months away. And then his last year, of course, I'm coaching basketball, which I didn't want to do, but I'm like, I knew in my head, like, this is the last, my other boys graduated. This is the last. I was kind of tight with that, with that group with kids. That went so fast. And then before you know it, like, we're doing graduation, and then I'm turning in my gear at the police department, all kind of at the same time. And so that whole thing, that transition sucked. I knew it was coming, and I prepared the best that I could for it. And, I can't put it in any other way of, like, you prepare for it, but until you sit in it and the time comes, you then have to feel it and adjust. Because I knew it was coming. I was done with police work, but I got up at the same time every day. I went into the detective bureau in the first half hour, 45 minutes. I've got my tribe, my people. We're shooting a breeze. We're cracking up. We're doing all this stuff. So after coffee hour, all right, man, what do you got to work on? All right, let's work on that. Let's go here. Let's do this. We're working together. And you have a tribe. You have a focus. You have a purpose. And that's gone. And you turn in your keys, and they're like, see ya. And I'd have all these people tell me, like, that retired before me, like, be ready to be a picture on the wall. It's as if you never worked there. And I'm like, I get it. I'm cool with that. You know, it is what it is. And then when the time comes, you're like, oh, nope, they were right. So really adjusting to that and being comfortable with the fact that I didn't care that people didn't remember me. I wanted the relationships to be there. I wanted that tribe. Every man needs a tribe and a focus. And when that's pulled away from you instantly, it hurts. So the following Monday after I retired, I was sitting on my couch tearing up like, my gosh, man, this sucks worse than I thought it would. But yeah, that all came crashing down in one spot. And the way through that was, again, I now teach and talk about transitioning in life, whether it's a retirement, whether it's a move, these big life events. I started watching podcasts on like some dudes getting out of the military, specifically like special forces guys and things like that, because they're so tight. And they would say the same thing. It's your tribe. It's your purpose. I put 12 years of my life into this. I lost friends in combat and this and that, and we're going to be brothers forever. And you are, but when you leave the organization, the train keeps going. And so I got a couple books, some Marine Raiders and a couple Navy SEALs that had written books about specifically transitioning out of those units, and that really helped me because now I'm like, okay, I'm not just going through this. This is a thing with that transition, and okay, that makes sense. That helps me. When you get other guys that feel the same way you do or are going through it as well, how did they get through it, gives you something to relate to, and then you're like, okay, this makes sense. So it was tough.
Man, I can imagine.
Yep.
And then, so I want to send a shout out to your podcast, 180 Impact Podcast. Talk a little bit about that. So you started that before you retired, correct?
Yeah.
Or towards kind of that point. What sparked that? What made you want to do a podcast?
I think it was, that just kind of seemed a way to kind of talk about some of the stuff that I had gone through. I was trying to, we had the class built, so the class was built up into specific topics, right? Like, okay, mental health. Okay, what about bad habits? What about raising kids? What about all of these things? So, like, let's talk about that in a podcast platform. Didn't know anything about it, how to podcast. Got super nervous. Was like, do I want to do this? And of course, you start overthinking everything, and there you get into a new adventure. It's like a hobby. You can go 100 different directions. So I thought, all right, my first podcast, I learned how to get platforms up. It was like 10, 15 minutes, and I'm always very self-critical. My literal first uploads were probably talking into my iPhone and then uploading it into the platform. I had stopped and started several times. Right now, the podcast has been down for quite a while. But I always said that the only reason being is that at some point I have to set up boundaries in my life, and I have to find out what's important. And this is the second time I've stepped away from the podcast for a period of time because of other obligations, one, and two, I want the podcast to help people. And I felt like I was trying to chase down content for the sake of chasing it down. And I want it to be more than that. I want people to walk away with something from the information. So even, coming up with ideas and solutions and all of that, it's hard. I'm not a creative person. I'm like, give it to me and I'll go do it. But coming up with that stuff on my own is hard. But when we were doing the podcast, and we're going to get it back up again shortly. I had, my wife on there, and we talked about relationship stuff and the marriage stuff and the communication stuff. My buddy that I've been best friends with through my entire career, walked him through and getting shot in the line of duty, and just different stuff, So really, I want to bring it back and narrow it down and have it a little more organized, which I can do. It's just finding that time. Because everybody's like, hey, when you retire, chill out for a couple months and just unwind. I'm like, no, that ain't working out so well for me. So really, it's getting that platform back up and running, and whether that's going to be video or just audio, I don't know yet, but I haven't given up on it. I just had to set it aside for a few minutes to or a few months rather, to get everything else in order and to say, all right, my family and figuring this whole thing out is my priority right now. Then I'll come back and I'll give you the information.
I listened to one of your podcasts with Rob Miller's. I know Rob too.
Yeah.
I thought that would have been fun to put you guys on a podcast together, which you guys have done some. But I was laughing because he's so mean to you. You know,
He is.
He's such a jerk to you.
And he wants that to be the whole thing. Like, we would talk, and I'm like, hey, he's always willing to come on and do more stuff. And he's like, yeah, we need to get on there and rip on each other. And I'm like, dude, like, listen, that's funny, but we got to have some content in here, and there has to be. I always want to make sure that my podcast has some sort of takeaway.
Yeah.
Like, not just entertaining. Of course, the entertaining stories, that's what people love, but what are they taking away from this? Whether it's something small, like, oh, okay, something that they said in that resonated with me, and I'm acting that way, or I'm feeling that way, I'm thinking this way. Now what do I do with it? So yeah, it's just a matter of like me getting the space to do the podcast. We had it up in Rob's office, which was nice. And then of course he switched careers and is working at a different place. So I had to like bundle all the stuff up and get it out of there. And it's like, you can't just put this stuff up in your house, right? Dogs barking, kids are walking around, like there's a lot that goes into this. But, so yeah, that's the thing with the podcast. Rob and I have been through a lot together. And that's one of my things with us as first responders, that accountability piece, you know, and I might not talk to him for 3 months, but I call him up. Like, I share the story. I call him up a few months ago. Hadn't seen him in a while. I'm like, hey, are you at the house? Yeah, what's up? I'm coming to pick you up. You know, the wife and I are going through it. We're having some struggles. We're having some issues. Rob gets in the car. What's up? Blah, 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 blah. Well, I said, shut up. I don't want to hear your voice. I just want to drive from it. Like, no problem, right? So you need that person in your life, and he's that person.
I like that he was giving you crap about, you know, haven't seen you in a while. He said, I've been on vacation, and he said, oh, you've been on vacation? Yeah, from having to look at you. And you're cracking jokes, and he's cracking jokes at you, and the whole time you're just trying to stay on point. He's trying to get you off.
Yeah,
it's really comical.
And he did that, and he's used to doing that because he would do it to me at work. We doubled up all the time, right? And we work specific neighborhoods, and there's 100 stories we have. But I remember one time, like, he knows he can get under my skin. So we were on a traffic stop. And I walk up to the car, right, and I'm like, hey, how you doing, Officer Smith, Battle Creek Police, license, registration, proof insurance, and they're digging around, and I'm seeing this car, like, I look back, and he's sitting there, and I'm on a traffic stop now, like, dude, right? So he knows those little things, and then we get back in the car, and I'm like, can you quit acting like a child for once in your life, right? So we go back and forth. I usually forgive him because I have to, and then that's our friendship, that's our relationship, but he's truly a brother that... like I said, I might not see him for 6 months. I'll walk over to his house, walk in the door, open his fridge, you know, that type of thing. And it's like, I'm going to tell you what you want to, not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear.
That's awesome.
Period.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
So you've become, you know, like you said, 7 years ago or however long it was, or, you know, that you wouldn't have seen that God had this prepared for your life, you know, seeing that. So, because you've, through this podcast, through some of the things that you're doing, some of these conferences and some of these teachings, you became a voice and an advocate for mental health for officers, first responders, people coming out of the military. This has became your passion. You're saying you've retired now. You've put your full focus on this. What are ways that people can contact you, interact with you? You know, how are you coming? Like, are you being sought out by other police forces, or tell me how this is coming about?
Yeah, all of those, right? Yep. Sometimes we do a class. We're what's called MCOLS certified, so we're recognized through the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards through the state of Michigan for our class. So a lot of times people will reach out to us to do their officer wellness during. There's an international. It's called Critical Incident Training, CIT, which is how to teach law enforcement officers to go out and interact with people in mental health crisis. So that's its own entity. And then a small part of teaching officers that is an actual officer wellness piece that's put into that. So the one good thing is that a lot of like the mental health side of clinicians that teach CIT recognize that clinicians aren't good at telling police officers how to take care of themselves. So they'll contract with us. Okay. Right? We'll go there and do a 4-hour, we do an 8-hour class. And then a lot of times off of that will be emails. Typically, I'll work with people. I've done a few one-on-one coaching sessions. It's not mental health. I've actually had to cut a coaching session or two short and say, bro, you need some mental. I think you need a counselor therapist that can work on some of this stuff. So I'll get emails once in a while. Nothing that I've put out 100 miles an hour because I have a part-time job now doing some kind of consulting work with the community mental health and our first responders. But just email. You never know when God's going to pop something up. Like we got a call from the east side of the state, and we do a dispatcher. I didn't know that until several years ago. There's an academy for dispatchers over Oakland County near Detroit. We go over there and do an 8-hour class once a year as part of their curriculum. We do CIT up in Genesee County, Jackson County. So people just find us somehow. I'm not really big on, or I gotta be better, but I'm not sweet on putting my face on camera and bragging about what I do and like, hey, this is this. But I've got to advertise my stuff a little bit better because there's such a need out there. And I just don't like being that guy, but I have to because this is what God's called me to do, to put my face in front of camera and go, hey, I got the answers for you, and look at me and look at what I've done. But that's all relevant to being able to build those relationships with people. I've worked with people one-on-one. What's your purpose? What's your goals? What are you doing? Habits, behaviors, and things like that. So the 180impact@gmail.com. People usually just find me through email. I do have social media platforms, but I have not been active on them just because of the busyness. And I always want things to be perfect, and it's not going to be that way. So I just got to get my butt moving and throw stuff out there.
Hopefully this will help.
Yeah.
Put it out there too, and maybe someone who maybe not know to search for that, looking for something else and find it and see it.
For sure.
Tell me what are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions with mental health, especially in this field as a first responder, an officer. What are some areas that you see where people struggle? Is it just knowing what is going on with themselves? Because like you said, you had this going on, started kind of happening with you, your attitude was changing, but you didn't really realize what it was. You couldn't put your finger on it. What are...
Yeah. I don't know if it's a misconception as much as it is just a lack of self-awareness, because I talk to other people all the time and it's like, I'm good. I can go through all this stuff and I just deal with it. And my thing is always like, you're good until you're not. And so it's really just that self-awareness and being able to knock that pride down. You can still be an ass kicker. You can still be a warrior. I know guys that are in the SEAL teams that have been Army Rangers. You're not sweeter than they are. And they're able to recognize like, hey man, my cheese is sliding off the cracker. I need to do something here, whether that's peer support group, so the biggest myth I think really is that self-awareness piece, and just say like, you're not okay, dude. If you're okay, that means that everything in your life is great. You're sleeping well, you're eating well, your relationships are on point, you're happy-go-lucky, you got everything planned out. Are you meeting all your goals? Do you have hobbies outside of work? Nobody that I know of can answer that and say, yeah, man, all this stuff is sweet.
And that was going to bring my next question. How can you tell? Like, what are some, like, for someone who's like, feels like they got it together, but really deep down internally they're struggling, what are some of the things that can help bring that awareness to the surface? Like, what are some key ways that people can identify, like, hey, I need to talk to somebody, or I need to make a step in that direction to get help?
So I would say, like, in the career, like if you're a police officer for 4 or 5 years, I'm starting to notice, or somebody else is coming to me like, hey man, Yeager's messed up, he's going through some stuff. I just sit down and have a casual conversation, like, how are things going? Oh, I'm good. Okay. You still loving the job? Do you still have fun at this job every day? Number one, because after about 3 or 4 years, you get that identity shift where this job ain't so cool anymore. And that's my first indicator. And it's just having that conversation with them of like, are you good? Do you love this job? And really just getting down to brass tacks and say, listen. And I think maybe my story in being relatable and still saying, like, I've been doing this for 7, 8 years. You don't think that I have days where I come home and I see stuff that's going on around us? And I'm like, why? So really those signs, any first responder that's been on the job for any length of time is not okay. Prove me wrong. I would say prove me wrong. It is going to change you. It is going to affect you. We're not selling insurance. No offense to insurance salesmen. I'm a good buddy with one. But you're seeing some absolute gruesome stuff, the depravity of humanity and what people are capable of. You're not okay in dealing with that.
Do you feel like since identifying, again, identifying this in yourself, working with other people, is there like a stigma that you feel like you've been able to help change with those that you have coached and interact with? Do you feel like maybe you go into a conference and start identifying this, and then all of a sudden you see people come up like, wow, like their eyes light up, like that's me. Like,
Yeah.
have you seen that taking place?
Absolutely. And when we go to the classes, my wife will come with me, and she'll sit in the back row. And during a break, she'll be like that officer sitting, the front row. Da 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 da. When you started talking about the marriage stuff, I saw, right, she's watching the body language, and it's tough, and I get it. I would like to do more workshop type stuff because I don't like to get up and run my mouth for 4 hours, or, like workshop and interact and have them write stuff down in journal. But I get it. It's mental health, and you have to face yourself, and that's very difficult. So when you're walking into a group of alpha male cops, alpha female cops, we're big on pride, we're sweet, we're the fixers, we're the doers. You're not going to get them there raising their hand and going, hey. That's when the emails come in afterwards, and I'm very specific about when we leave the class, like, hey, reach out to me, because there's always that guy or gal in that class that's recognizing, like, this is me, because I talk my story, I talk through the timeline, and that's my point, is that something here in this class is going to have you say, that's me right there. So I want you to contact me after the class, because they're not going to raise their hand in the middle of it and go, you know what? I'm going home and I'm drinking 4 nights a week, and this ain't right. I'm going home and I'm bitching my wife out and I'm rude to my kids. They're gonna send the emails. They're not going to raise their hands in class, because there's also a stigma, obviously, about going to seek professional help, if you will.
It's like you don't want to admit that you're
right.
crazy, or,
right. And a lot of officers will think like, oh, I'm going to get put on light duty. They're going to take my gun away. I'm like, no, that's not the case, bro. It's not the case. But talk therapy and go into a psychologist or psychiatrist or licensed counselor is a whole other topic to try to break through.
That was actually my next question. I was going to say, can you break down which types of therapy and choosing the right one, that how do you know which one is right? What types of therapy there are out there?
Yeah.
Some of those options.
So there's a lot to look forward to, and I tell officers or any first responder, number one, counseling is a tool. You have to work at it. Don't just go to somebody and tell them your life story and expect them, right? So what I say, there's licensed counselors, there's psychologists, there's licensed social workers that can all do therapy. A psychiatrist just gives you meds. Not a big fan. Do what you got to do. Look for somebody that is culturally competent, because that's our big thing. Like, oh man, I'm not trusting them. They don't know what I see. There's a lot of people out there now that were married to police officers, or were former police officers, firefighters, first responders that now do clinical work. So find somebody that's culturally competent, somebody that will give you a free consultation. Like when I coach people one-on-one, I'm like, we're going to chat for 15, 20 minutes. I might be able to help you, I might not. Somebody that, a therapist, ask them what they're trained in. Ask them if they've seen it work. Cognitive behavioral therapy, there's all kinds of different stuff out there. My biggest takeaway is we can talk a lot about that, but do your homework. It can be an effective tool if you're willing to try, you're willing to give it time, and you're willing to do the work. And you have a therapist or counselor that holds you accountable. I heard Jordan Peterson say one time something to the effect of, like, if you're going to counseling and it's okay to not be okay and to be messed up, and have your therapist tell you, like, this is where you are, but if they're comfortable saying and justifying that and not moving forward, you're in trouble. You want somebody that's going to hold you accountable and show you how to begin to enact that change.
That's really good advice. All right, and so tell me this, so I feel like that you just kind of touched on a minute ago too, about 3-4 years in the job. Is there a difference between burnout, just almost any career? I did personal training for a long time. After a few years, it was towards the end of my career doing one-on-one, I couldn't do one more one-on-one personal training session. They're an hour. They used to feel like they'd go by so fast to where 1 hour felt like 10 hours. Is there, how do you identify the difference between burnout and then really being on the cusp of like, mental breakdown or really mentally being hurt there.
So I think like the difference between burnout and on the cusp, like, is there really a difference? And I would say with first responders is that, like, think about going back to your academy. Think about going back into personal training. You get there, it's great. Nobody goes to a police academy or an academy to go in and expect this career to suck. You come in, you're excited, you're running on adrenaline, you're meeting new friends, you're hyper vigilant. All of these cool, exciting things are going on. So you go into the job and career with this expectation. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to arrest bad guys, I'm going to take them to jail, I'm going to seek justice, they're going to do jail time, we're going to get guns off the streets, we're going to get dope off the streets. Let's go. And you're doing that. And then you're doing that again. And then I just arrested Yeager for possession of crack. Okay, cool. Now I got to go to court. All right, he's going to get probation. Next time I arrest Yeager, he fought with me and he had a gun. Okay, we're going to violate his probation. We'll put him in jail for a week or two. Are you kidding me? Right? So now you're starting this cycle of rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. They're not getting any jail time. You're out here just, this isn't what I signed up for. I'm not a babysitter. I'm not a social worker. All of these things that you see your career being, you're all of these other things too. We're social workers, we're counselors, we're parents, we're garbage men, we're snowplow. I mean, you name it. We have to do everything. And again, taking that trauma after a while on and on and on. So you're kind of like shift work. You're getting hauled into court. So now you're sleep deprived. You're trying to turn it off when you come home. All of these cumulative things start building up. And what I tell them is like, now look at this slide. And I play a specific video from the episode of Cops. When they go to this house and there's these hillbillies out there and one beat another one with a 2x4 because he lives in Bubba's trailer and Bubba don't want to get a job and Bubba's playing on his cell phone all day. And they interview Bubba and Bubba's like, yeah, man, I'm the #1 in the world. Look at my phone. And all the cops are laughing. And I'm like, put yourself as a rookie officer in that position. You go to that call. I'm calling Miller. Hey, man, I need to see you over here. We're having fun. We're joking about it. 5 years later, you go to that same scene, and your attitude is extremely different. I'm getting called out here again. I've been taking these folks to jail. CPS is involved. Nothing's happening. You're pissing me off. You're wasting my time. I can't even do my job effectively. Same scenario, different time frame. Now you've been doing this for 5-6 years, time after time after time after time. Your expectations are no longer being met. Like, I don't even know why I signed up for it. I can't even be a cop anymore. What's the use? What's the point? So when you start thinking about that, you need to really check yourself and say, okay, is this a little bit of burnout? And if it is, what do I need to do? Does that mean I need to get into some counseling? Does it mean I need to change perspectives? Maybe you need to change your career. But having that extreme self-awareness of like, something's changing here. Also, your loved ones, if you're married, listen to them. Because my wife would joke with me and Rob and call us names. Hey, it's Grumpy 1 and Grumpy 2. I was on midnights. I was working overtime. We were burning the candle at both ends. Ask somebody that's close to you, am I changing? Have that accountability and that awareness within yourself. No big deal. They're going to tell you yes. And when they tell you yes, dig deeper into that. How? Why? You're just saying that. I'm not changing. Everybody's an asshole. The world's a mess. I'm not changing. Check. Yeah, you are. It's getting to you. Do something about it.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
And not to change it in lighter mode, just for the record, I've never done crack before. So.
Oh, okay.
Kind of funny, though. I like that what you said about that. This kind of funny story happened this week about our spouses keeping us accountable. I shaved my head and I got razor burn like last week. And so I was washing my hair and so burned in my head. I was like, oh my gosh. So that's it. I'm growing my hair back out. I told my wife, so I'm growing my hair back out. She goes, oh my gosh, you look terrible with hair. Don't do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're awful. So thank goodness for our spouses who can, but be honest with us in those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're to a point where you don't want to listen to your spouse, number one, you should. But okay, get somebody else. But you have to have an accountability partner or somebody that's going to call you on your crap.
That's awesome.
Period.
Yeah, it's perfect because I didn't share any of these questions I have for you, and you lead me right like perfectly on them. It's like perfect. So because one of the next questions I was going to say is, So advice for first responder and officer for how do you support, like you notice, Miller's starting to not be himself, not the person you know and love. How do you come at a friend like that, a colleague, somebody you really care about that? What's your advice? Like, how do you, without overwhelming themselves by carrying the weight of their issues that they have going on, and also coming at them with love, how do you, what's your advice on that of being on the side where, hey, I notice, that Smith's not doing well.
Yeah.
I need to address that. What are some options or ways to go about that?
First and foremost, I would say that you just got to go up and call them out, because I remember you ask anybody, any first responder, hey, how you doing? They're going to tell you they're fine. Take that extra. I tell them, like, I don't get in people's business, but get in their business, because you could be saving their life. No, dude, seriously, how you doing? Like, I don't want to give you any advice. I'm just here to listen. Let's go grab a cup of coffee. Let's do something. And they still might be hesitant or resistant at first. That's okay. You've planted that seed that they know now that at least, because I've had this happen, I'm good. Like, bro, I don't think you are. It's cool. I don't need to give you advice. Maybe you just need to talk. Whatever the case may be, just be really open and honest in your heart towards that person. And whether they want to talk to you right now, or maybe, you're planting that seed and then like a week later, they're going to call you and say, hey, man, let's talk, let's have coffee. So it's a fine line, because it varies depending on the individual. Like, some dudes are tougher skinned than others, and some guys are like, oh yeah, I want to talk and whatever. But I say, if I know you're having an issue and I know who you are, I'm going to get in your business a little bit, because I love you and I care about you. And I'd rather be in your business a little bit. Even if I'm wrong, I'm going to pry, because I care. Because nobody pried at me, and I just said, oh, I'm okay. And nobody really pulled me. And I'm not using this as a victim mentality whatsoever, but nobody said, hey man, let's talk. Let's figure this out. You're pissed all the time. You're really starting to push the boundaries. Like, what's up? Nobody did that for me. I'm going to do that for other people.
That's awesome. And you almost get jaded too. Why doesn't anybody care about me? Why are they, and even though people do, and maybe they don't know how to ask you, but then you start thinking, like, why aren't they asking me? I'm not doing okay. Why wouldn't they ask me? I would ask them.
Yeah.
And so it plays into that.
I went through a period of that, because of a specific somebody in high ranking would ask me, and when I was able to talk to them, I'm like, you knew I wasn't okay. You knew I wasn't okay, but you didn't do anything about it. That's not their responsibility. That was my responsibility. So be very careful playing that victim mentality.
I love that, where it's a follow-up question. Like, ask them, how you doing? And it's automatic. We all almost automatically, everybody just,
yeah,
I'm good. I'm okay. Like, how are you really doing?
Right.
I talk about this. I didn't really know my dad growing up. Didn't have a good relationship with him. He had his issues. My parents got divorced when I was young. Thank God for forgiveness, something that God put in my heart to forgive him. In the last couple of years of his life, we had a good relationship, and he was pretty sick. And it's actually my wife. I'd gotten this Mustang. My dad was a Mustang guy, and gotten this car fixed up, and it was convertible. And she was like, I think you should call your dad and see if he wants to go for a ride. I don't think he's going to die tomorrow or next week. I just feel like you should. And so thankfully I listened to her. I called. Yeah, I'd love that. I go over, and he's on oxygen. I learned how to use the oxygen tank and all of that stuff, and took him for a ride. And probably the only time in my life where he said, how's life? And I said, oh, I'm good. And he goes, no, like, how is life? Like, how is your life? Are you happy? And the thing is, my dad was kind of a bull crapper. I always struggled with him with that, but it was like, man, like we talked on a different level because of that, just by him asking that question.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that's the one, like, great conversation that I had with him. And then he ended up passing just a couple months later, you know, and so I think there's a lot into that, of asking that question, but then asking that question.
Pause and let them know, because it's like any other passing by. You go to church, how you doing? Oh, I'm great. You don't want to burden other people, and then sometimes you don't want people to burden you.
Right.
Like, I walk up to you in church, like, hey man, how's it going? Oh, not so good. And you're like, all right, I got to go into the service, or I got stuff to do. I didn't expect that answer, so man, now what do I do? Take the time. If you're going to ask somebody how they're doing or whatever, make sure that you have a couple minutes at least, right? Don't just do it in passing. Stop. The basic communication stuff. Look them in the eye, like, dude, be sincere, and people will see your sincerity, I think, and that's one of the biggest keys.
That's really good. All right, so going on to self-care. So what are some self-care practices? I've listened to some of your podcasts and some of your videos that you have. So I feel like you got some really great ways for like self-care. What are some number one ways that you feel like that you recommend for self-care and for your mental health, to improve your mental health?
So there's a ton of them. Again, a lot of them are based on, when you think of these things, you think of like all this Eastern philosophy stuff. I'm like, no, they stole meditation from us believers. They stole all this stuff from us. So really, like, I always find stuff and then I geek out on what's the physiological value of it. Self-care is just that. Are you eating properly? What does nutrition and sleep and hydration, how does that help you out physically and mentally? How does sleep affect you? Are you sleeping properly? The research on lack of sleep, I'm looking at research on like a lot of special forces guys that are getting out of the military and committing suicide, and they're saying it's lack of sleep. It's so detrimental because when you sleep properly, there's a whole chemical process that goes on in your mind and your brain and affects your endocrine system and all these chain systems. Are you sleeping properly? Working out and exercise, the benefits. Deep breath work. We got to move the diaphragm. The diaphragm moves the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs your breathing and respiration and all of that stuff to get you out of fight or flight. We're all in fight or flight constantly, whether we think we are or not. So I tell folks a little bit about sympathetic and parasympathetic. We want to be in that parasympathetic state. How do you do that? Relax. Vagus nerve, nervous system. Take a few minutes to breathe properly. I teach people how to breathe all the time. Stretch, we sit. What are the benefits of that? Do you need to go check in with a counselor? Do you need a peer support buddy? Just here's the toolbox. What do you need? What's going to help you out? It could be something as simple as like, I'm not sleeping properly. Let's focus just on that. What are you doing? How does that affect you? Is that self-care? Absolutely. Is eating properly self-care? Absolutely. Breath work, sitting still by yourself, all of these little tools, depending on kind of like what you're going through. But the biggest thing is that just take time every day, 10, 15 to 20 minutes. Get in your word, journal, calm yourself down, learn how to breathe properly, and reset your focus. Will do a ton for you. And then physically, I'm biggest on the breath work right now because that's the fastest way to get from fight or flight into what they'll call rest and digest. But when you breathe properly, and 95% of us don't breathe properly because we're breathing from up here, not down here, that breath work, again, is able to move the diaphragm, is able to stimulate the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve then tells your body, settle down, and can bring you down into rest and digest. Cool. Now start. What's your meditation? What word are you reading? Right? So, it's a simple process, but it takes very intentional work because we're all inundated with all this crap that's going on around us. We need to shut it down.
Do me a favor. I'm really interested and intrigued with the breathing. Mm-hmm. I'm positive I don't breathe right. Can you take me through a quick breathing? Yeah, I didn't think I was going to do this, but yeah.
So I just got this tool called the O2 trainer. Boss Rutan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been watching all old UFC fights for my workouts every
morning.
The
old open hand Boss Rutan, he was a monster. He still is. The man's like 60-some years old. But he started finding out about this breathwork stuff, and he's got the O2 trainer, which trains, it's like a regulator. But it trains the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm. Okay. So basically what you do is that if you drop your hands to your side like this, and I'll give people the cue, taking a breath in to the count of 4 and then holding it for 4 seconds. We're just going to do that. So as big a breath as you can for 4 seconds, and then I'm going to say pause, hold. I want your exhale to be twice as long as your inhale. So if we're breathing in for 4 seconds, we're going to hold it for 1 or 2, and then you're going to have to kind of like maybe turn from the mic, but purse your lips and breathe out, and I'll count with you, okay? So we'll do this real quick. Now watch. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pause. keep pausing and hold it. What we're going to do is we're going to take another 4-count breath when I say go. 3, 2, 1, go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now exhale. All right, relax for a second. Now, what I want you to do this time is if you have to hold onto that chair, hold onto that chair. Because what I watched you do is this. Yes?
Yep.
So what you're doing is that's fight or flight breathing. You're using probably the top third of your lungs. You're not engaging your diaphragm. We're breathing up. We're breathing vertically. We want to breathe horizontal. Your lungs come all the way down here. Your diaphragm sits right above here. So when you focus on, keep your shoulders down.
Okay.
If you have to pin them. So when you take that 4-count breath, I want you to breathe out and not up. So you're gonna feel your belly come out, and you're gonna feel your ribs. They should expand, and we're gonna try to do the same thing. So keep your biggest cue is gonna be to keep the shoulders down and take that 4-count breath in. Ready, set, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Now exhale, and just let it out slow. Once it's all out, just pause and then return to normal breathing. Now, I don't know that during that time, if you were able to, did you feel stuck?
I felt chubby.
Yeah. So your belly's going out. And I tell people belly breathe, but you're not breathing into your belly. You're breathing into the bottom portion of the lungs. So you're oxygenating more of your body. You're getting that diaphragm to move. That will then touch other organs and hit that vagus nerve. So really, once you do that and you learn how to breathe out and not up, it's put a baby on their back in a crib and watch them breathe. You'll see their tummy go up and down. You watch your dog breathe, you don't see them jumping at the shoulders. We are in a panic state of breathing from when we were kids. When a doctor puts a stethoscope on your chest and they tell you to breathe, remember that? What do? You go,
yeah,
and then out, and they put it on your back. When somebody, when you're a kid and somebody jump scares you, it's, right? Yeah. And so we get into that pattern. And when we get into fight and flight and we go about our day and we got our careers and we got our kids and we got all this stuff going, we're just like, we're locked in. And that will affect every system in your body. You see most people will complain of, when we talk about the body keeps the score, stressed out people, tension headaches, neck pain, back pain, hip pain. It's all stress into the body because we're jacking ourselves up.
That's me.
Yeah. So I say, here's how you learn to breathe properly, and it's a process. Get the O2 trainer. Our family friend was trained under Belisa Vranich, who's a breathwork coach out in California. She trained DEA tactical agents and UFC fighters on how to breathe properly. And you get guys, right, that are locked up and have people locked up and they can breathe. They don't breathe through their backs, but they can hold somebody like this and be able to breathe because they can expand all of this area in here and sit there all day long because they're breathing properly. But that's a huge way to get your nervous system settled down and to calm yourself down. And the reason I like it so much is because, like, when you're in the job and you're having officers going to a hot call, you're having paramedics running code, while you're there, while you're heading to that call, just take that second. Boom, breathe it up as you get out there. After a hot call, or anybody for that matter, step back, take a couple of those big deep breaths, get the central nervous system back online, and physically you'll feel tons better. So that's a huge self-care technique, because if you can get yourself out of fight or flight and start getting yourself like, hey man, chilled out, you can then put all these other things in place and it's going to stick and be more effective. But we have to get out of go, lockdown,
awesome.
hyper.
I'm definitely gonna be working on that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you call it right away. Like, I still
yeah,
I do that. But I do have tension headache, lower back pain all the time. So and we had on the podcast Angie Brandon, so I'm doing NAD, working on researching that. Connor was with me when I got a shot in my knee for PRP. Like, I'm trying to do all the things to be healthy. I with my wife being sick.
Yeah.
My job before, my wife being sick, then taking on a new career, trying to build things back up. I feel like I haven't taken care of myself in years, is what it feels like.
Well, then you haven't.
And I haven't.
You said that's what it feels like. So what we'd say is, going back to the 1970s and 80s, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. He worked with PTSD Vietnam dudes. Nobody wanted to touch him. And that's when meds became really big, and all these psychiatrists are pumping meds into these vets returning home. And he's like, man, our body is holding on. And he started getting these vets. That was like one of the first studies with yoga and PTSD. And then they started saying, like, it's movement that gets the stress out of the body. You're jamming all this adrenaline up and all this stuff all day. It's the movement. It's running. It's yoga. It's lifting weights. It's doing something. And I'm not going to go into that, but like dancing and all of this stuff releases that tension from the body because we hold it in way more than we think we do. And your body holds all that stress. It just does. It's scientifically proven. And then moving forward, that's how I really got big into the vagus nerve that runs from your medulla oblongata down out to the heart, out to the diaphragm, into the intestines. And when you talk about your autonomic nervous system, that vagus nerve sends signals to your breathing, your respiration, your digestion, 3 huge things in your body. And when that's all jacked up, that's going to affect all of that stuff. And that's what stress does to our physical bodies. So you need to get rid of that stress.
I got a buddy that's going through that right now. He indigestion issues, stopped taking his medication, a shock on the system, and my chiropractor's like, his vagus nerve is messed up. And he's like, what? So,
there it
super,
is.
super interesting. So I appreciate you taking me through that. The rest of the day now, I'm going to go to the sauna a little bit later today, and I'm going to be working on my
So the biggest takeaway is like lay back on your back and put something on your stomach, like that water bottle or something light, and you're trying to raise that up to the ceiling, right? And then breathe it out all the way to like you're letting all that air out like you've gotten punched. And then pause, start that cycle over again. Just take a few minutes.
That's great. I appreciate that. So one thing that I heard you say a couple times, in one when you, as an officer, and then even now like with the podcasting, setting boundaries. Talk about the importance of setting boundaries and what you mean by that.
Yeah. So when we talk about the podcast, something that I absolutely love doing, want to get back into it, want to connect and do something similar to this. I'm way better with people than I am by myself. But I knew that my marriage needs some working on. I'm changing careers. I've got a son that's just getting out of high school, another son that's trying to find his career path, all of these life things going on. If we keep stacking brick upon brick upon brick, what's going to give? And so I have to take those things that are important to me, but I got to say, all right, I've got to look at this thing as a whole. If I'm going to spend 5-10 hours a week on one podcast episode, how much of that energy is being taken away from what's more of a priority right now, which is my relationship with my wife? When I was a cop and I wouldn't get called out to every single raid on the SWAT team, I had to be there, fear of missing out. I wasn't setting boundaries. I was answering the phone for everybody all the time, wouldn't say no. I wasn't setting boundaries. So it's going to be up to each individual, but basically it's those things that say you can't be all things to all people all the time. And it's very hard for us because as first responders, we're fixers, we're doers, we're servants of other people, and that really pulls away from us. So it feels extremely selfish for me to say, you know what, I'm going to put the phone in my bedroom today, and I'm going to take a drive to Kalamazoo for me, for myself, where I never do this very often. I'm going to sit on the couch with a blanket and a pillow and watch what I want on Netflix today and not worry about, there's 100 things I should be doing and could be doing, but I'm going to take this time. I'm going to set that boundary. I'm going to tell that person, no, I can't help you with that. Now, obviously, if that's something that, somebody very close to me needs, we're always going to drop the phone. But if it's something that can wait, like an email or I should really get back to this person, nope. That's setting boundaries. And that's up to each individual to try to find out what those boundaries are. And that's being aware and taking stock of what's going on in your life. Am I managing everything properly? And am I effective to what's important to me? Am I effective at home right now with my wife and my kids on top of everything else that I have going on? So you need to tell people no. in certain things. And it's a hard line, man, because we're servants, we're first responders, we're the fixers, and we want to go out there and go, 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 go. We don't like to disappoint people. We don't like to let people down. And I don't think we are. But it's true, but we don't want to hear it. But you can't help other people if you're a complete wreck. You're doing them a disservice.
And I think that resonates with me as a real estate agent. You know, I mean, that's, it'll be, just the other day I told my kids, like, nope, Dad's home for the night. And somebody called and was like, oh my gosh, this house just came up. I got to see it first. All right, sorry, kids, I got to go.
Yeah.
And it's starting that new career. And I know that there'll be, and one thing that with my wife in the beginning of this, because we hadn't worked for 2 years, I said, look, you're not going to see me this next year. Like, I'm building this thing up. I'm giving everything I got to this for this next year. Well, the year was October, it was 1 year, but just like 4 more months, and so I already feel that in my own life, so, and I think that's in any career really, or a lot of,
Absolutely.
because I'm a go
Yeah.
person too.
And
it's hard.
That's more based on not necessarily your career, but your personality.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. No, that's great. We talked about exercise. So tell me about the impact mental wellness from like your research and in your life, the impact of exercise. Like I said, I remember you from the Y back in the day. And, I'm being a personal trainer for so long and having bouts of not, like when I got out of personal training, which was a year and a half ago, I always, pride thing was I never wanted to be the out of shape trainer. I always wanted to be able to outwork. If there was like a workout regimen, I want to be able to outwork the people I'm training. I feel like I should.
Yeah.
I put that weight on my shoulders. It's something I put on myself.
Right.
And then it was like, I don't have to do that anymore. And part of the boundaries for me too is building this gym at home. It's more time with my family. I can come in my pajamas and my dudes and work out with my boys.
Yeah.
And there's no expectations for me. And so that was part of that investment for me. But I saw where I was working out vigorously and rigorously all the time I just want to break, then I started, and I felt like myself getting out of shape and then felt like some of those, and I've always said it this way. I think that if there's not like a pyramid, they all work together: spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, physical health. One of those gets out of line, it's all yo-yo.
Absolutely.
To keep it in line. So we can talk about in what you do and how you look at exercise. Is that part of mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, exercise has been scientifically researched, right, for years now. I mean, especially within the last 20 years with the way that we're able to, just because of technology. I've always been big into physical culture, right? Went into the military, got out of police work. And I think a lot of the physical fitness was, it's competition when you're a cop, right? You want to get on the SWAT team, so there's this edge in competition and how hard you can work out. And then, in our day, I think I'm a little bit older than you, but like the bodybuilding magazines and that physical culture, you always wanted to be strong and work towards being this, and this. And then, so I was always almost like a step ahead. Because I would research exercise and working out so much, and my wife being a physical therapist, I tell people, like, I was into CrossFit before CrossFit was even hardly known, like back in 05, 06, right? And I'm like, it got commercialized and blew things out of the water, but I would come up with the harder, faster workouts, and I always wanted that edge. And I think for a long time, exercise was more about driving and being competitive than it was about the actual physiological benefits as I'm getting a little bit older. But a couple years ago, I kind of, I tell this story to my wife. I was at Binder Park Zoo with one of the kids, and we're walking around, and I'm looking at guys that are roughly my age, and they just quit on life, right? The dad shoes, the socks up to the knees, the huge gut, and they're just there. And I'm like, this dude, and I'm looking around, and that's kind of the norm. And I'm like, this is the culture. And then I thought, I've got 2 boys that are pretty competitive, so I want to be a role model to them. I'm always smack talking them, and they're smack talking me, so there's that competition. But in all actuality, for longevity, as I get a little bit older, lifting weights and resistance training is far more probably beneficial than any type of like long distance running, right? The research is out there. As we age, we want to maintain the muscle mass as much as we can, cardiovascular benefits. So what I've done is just like, I want to be that old guy, that takes care of himself, that's still competitive, that can push the youngsters and be an example for my kids. I want to look decent in a t-shirt, and that means not having to work out 6 days a week and it being the sole focus and eat every 2 hours and how many carbs, because I've been through that and it's exhausting. You probably know as a personal trainer, the body for life, the 6 meals a day. So as we've researched and the fact that like we don't need to eat that much a day, and that was hard to get rid of. Like I don't need 4 protein shakes every 2 hours in a bar and palm-sized protein. Eat instinctively, and I say, I'm not hungry right now, I'm not going to eat. Making sure I'm eating whole foods, which are obviously good for mental health, physical health, like you said. Everything's hooked. If you're fat and nasty and don't feel good about yourself, how does that take a toll on you mentally?
Exactly.
So that's one big thing. So I have a lot of different reasons, but my workouts now, you know, I'm a lot closer to 50 than I am 40. I still like to push it very hard. And you got to find that balance to where if I'm exhausted the next day, then I'm just going to walk. Walking is extremely beneficial. And it was hard to start bringing that down to trying to compete with the boys now that they're probably a little bit stronger than me. I can still whip them. But, you know, just that whole thing of like physical fitness, taking care of your health. They're like what? Sunshine, exercise, water, and proper nutrition are probably the best cures for depression and anxiety. So take care of yourself physically. We see people our age that they can keep you alive for a long time. I don't want to be 50 years old on an oxygen tank, overweight, can't take care of myself. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of your life. That's where I want to be.
No, that's good. We were just at a water park not that long ago, and that was the wake-up call for me because it was the first time in a very long time or ever in my life where I felt like that dad that had given up. You know,
bring me my Crocs.
Right, exactly. I know, and I was like, I told my wife, I said, because I didn't feel. Usually, is a culture thing. You look around, and it was almost kind of sad to me for everyone that was there that there were, you know, I'd say 95% of, especially the guys, were just out of shape.
Yeah.
And I think of a way, you know, my mindset is like, if we got attacked right now by our enemy and they ran in and we had to go hand-to-hand combat, like we're losing.
We're done.
We're done.
Yeah.
And so I told my wife, like, that's it. I came home and I'm now, for me, it's not so much eating too much. That's my problem. I got to eat until I'm fulfilled, not full.
Yeah.
And so that's my thing. So I'm back on it now, but it was like I needed that. And then in a way too, I needed that mental break for a year from it.
Yeah.
But here I'm tracking my food again, which I really, some people at work, some people doesn't. You know, I use an app, Chronometer. It tells me like everything. It's like too much information, but I enjoy that. Breaks down my numbers, tracks with my Fitbit, so I know how much I'm taking out or putting in compared to burning a day.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to that stuff is like, what's going to be sustainable? You like tracking your food? I can't stand it.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't stand eating every 2 hours. So I know that like I'm not hungry until about 11 or 12, and that's perfectly fine. I'll have a shake and something else, right? And then I like to eat until I'm full. You know, I can't eat a snack and then move on. Like I need to feel full. But that's sustainable for me, but it's healthy because I have that barometer of I know what's healthy and I know what's not. So then once a week or something when I go out with the kids or whatever and I'm like, hey, we're going to throw down some Mexican food, I'm now able to jump right back in the track and say, all right, I'm not doing that for a few more days. So it's finding that balance. But I think more importantly is like, what is exercise doing for you? And the benefits are so numerous. Everybody should be doing something.
Let me ask you this. So we've talked a lot about, and we were kind of talking about this with like the 3-year, 4-year kind of start getting that burnout, and that's in law enforcement, first responders. Do you think there should be something in place that is, or maybe there is, that goes with those life changes? So more not so much like after the fact, but a preventative measure, or, maybe when you're in the academy, do they already have something where you're going in there and they're talking about this is what, or things put in place, even gyms at the, police station or things like that. What do you think about that? What is there, and what ways moving through these different changes in life, and not even just in a career, but just life changes and shifts to prepare you for that?
I know physically we've come a long ways, right? When I was a brand new officer, again, the sports science and the research and the nutrition and all that stuff, like it was still the bodybuilding magazines, and you were lucky if one place had a protein bar. Now it's out of control. We've gotten way better at taking care of ourselves physically. I think as a generation of first responders, we do have a sweet gym at the new station. I think guys and gals are far better at physically taking care of themselves, because that's the culture shift now, is fitness and a lot of that, jiu-jitsu and all these things to stay very active. That's important. And with that mental health stuff, I think there needs to be at least that in the academies and some of these spots, like, hey, heads up, I know you're not listening to me right now, but if you don't balance some of this life stuff out, in 2 or 3 years, you're going to be burned out. And I'm just going to tell you, at this academy, if it were me, 25% of you are going to become alcoholics. More than 50% of you will be divorced. So there goes probably your pension, and you're going to be a mess, right? You're not going to sleep well, which is going to do all this bad stuff for you. And just run the statistics by them and say, I know you don't think that or believe that, but hear me out. So when the time does come, you can at least say, oh, I remember what Aaron said back in this class. And we do have a lot of young officers that do come to some of our training, and you can tell, certain of them are sitting there and kind of yoked up, and I'm like, I was there. I got it. I was that guy who was like, I'm doing SWAT team stuff, and I'm not having any mental problems, and I'm the alpha male, and I get it because I did all that. Mark my words, this job changes you, so just have that heads up. That's the best that you can do for some people.
And we've talked about marriage a lot. What do you think was the key factor for you sustaining, you're saying the percentage of divorce for you and your wife? What were the best, I guess, tips, or how did you guys survive all that you've been through 26 years now? How did you survive that?
The number one was Christ. If I wasn't a believer, this wouldn't have worked. That unctioning of the Holy Spirit's always in the back of your mind, because there are times when you're like, this ain't gonna make it. I don't want to do this anymore. We can't get along. We have nothing, and all of these things that the enemy plants in you. To points where I'm like, I'm honest with you, I don't even want to do this anymore, because I'm more miserable more often than not. I don't know you irritate me, and I do to her too. So Christ, number one. Number two, her. She's the most supportive, strong-willed person I've ever met in my life. And she just has this, we made a vow. I made a vow to you before God, period. She's much stronger than I am. Right? So when those little things come up, like she comes home late from work and she flops down on the couch, and I'm trying to watch a football game, and 10,000 questions come up, and she's stealing the pillows from the kids, I get super irritated. But then I look back and I go, she's deserved it. She's earned it. She's earned whatever the hell she wants to do in this house.
Yeah.
So that's my answer to that. I wouldn't have made it if it were just up to me. So if I didn't have Christ in my life, to even those times when I could not pray any more than like, Lord, help me. I don't want to read your word. I don't want to hear what you might have to say to me. All of these things, man, and it goes deep, and it's very difficult. And then her willingness just to not quit is way stronger than mine in that regard. That's awesome. That's how that worked out. Because when we go back through, we talk about marriages and stuff, we've been through the ringer. It's been tough. And after you don't stay married for 26 years without getting slapped and going through the mud. But each time that we do, it's like anything else. It's like lifting weights. Every time you seek that resistance, you come out stronger. It sucks at the time. That's why you lift weights, become bigger and stronger. And it's not fun. But on the other side of that, you're stronger for it. And that's where we're at.
Awesome. And I always tell young people too, like, that's why you should be very cautious who you marry, and making sure you really take your time, know that person.
And that's hard for young people, because they're like, oh, especially now in the Christian culture, I think these jokers are getting married like at 14, 15 years old, it seems like. And I'm like, dude, you're gonna have trouble, man, because being on the other side of that, having that life experience now, you're like, listen, I know they're awesome and you got all these things going on, but yeah, that's a whole other topic. I get it. It's tough.
All right. So kind of wrapping up here, if there's one message that you could get across to people, if there was like, if they only heard one Instagram snippet of today's podcast, what's the one message that you want to drive home today?
Oh, it's hard to put it into one, but I would say that, I guess to start anywhere, I'm gonna speak on like mental and emotional health and some of the main stuff that I teach. Oh man, this is a catch-all question. If it were one thing, I would just say, it's okay. I hate catchphrases. It's okay to be vulnerable and open up if you're not okay. I mean, we go, it's okay to not be okay. No, it's not, because we want to get better. It's okay to say, look at your life, look at what you've got going on, and saying, I need to pause. I need some help. And I don't care what that help is, right? If that's counseling, if that's coaching, if that just means you need to get your sleep squared away, whether you need some help in your marriage, just ask for help. Be vulnerable enough. Don't be so prideful to say, I'm good, if you're not. And I don't know if that's one like kind of specific overall message, but the fact of like, life is tough, period. And we all hit roadblocks and we all go through some stuff. So I guess circling back, my one takeaway is just understand that it's okay to be vulnerable and get help no matter what that is. And that doesn't mean you have to go to a psychologist or anything, but maybe that's sitting down with a buddy and being 100% real. Like, man, my marriage is in the tank. I'm burned out, whatever it may be. Don't be afraid. Screw it. We're dudes. I mean, most of us, but I mean, you and I here, we're guys, man. And you go through it and I go through it. You're just, like Goggins said a while ago, we're all going through it. Some just cover it up better than others. That's exactly what's going on. Yeah. So get that help, whatever that may be.
I always liked it too. I've heard everybody's normal until you get to know them, you know, like, but yeah, like, you know, prime example, you and your wife, I see social media when I've seen you out. I mean, tell you're in love with each other. It doesn't look like you guys have ever had a problem in the world. And you'd laugh at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And same with me and my wife, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But, and that's the problem. I don't want to say the problem with social media, because I'm not going to get up there and have a post and be like, yeah, you know, I kicked my wife out of the house today. We're always going to put our best foot forward on social media. But I always, I did a social media post, I think at our 24th or 25th anniversary, like, hey, we made it 24 years. It's been bumps and bruises and this and that. So, I don't want to put my business out there on social media, but anybody that gets on social media isn't going to put, because I see it all the time. I see people, they're like, oh, went to da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I know your life is a wreck because I know who you are and you're fake as hell. Yeah. Fine, do you, but I've always wanted to be very pretty much honest and open with what I've got going on. We have problems, we struggle, but at the end of the day, everything is a struggle if you want to get better. It sucks when you're going through your go-through, but you don't, that's the hardest thing when you're trying to tell your kids and teach your kids stuff because they don't have life experience. It's like, man, this sucks, but you're going to grow from it somehow, some way. We don't know how, we don't know why, and that's the hardest part. We don't know what God is up to. Just sit in it and feel it and let it suck, and you'll learn a lesson from it and move forward. Same thing with everything in life.
That's good. So, similar question, kind of a different way though. So, you got 2 sons, your wife, your brothers that you've worked with, those that you're coaching, teaching to. What do you want Aaron Smith legacy to be? What is it that you're living your life, and you're living your life in a certain way that your legacy would be? What is that, if you could put it into words?
My first legacy I'd want to be for my boys, because they, we've had conversations now that they're a little bit older, and my first legacy is like, hey, when I'm gone, and they're married and they have wives and they have issues and they have problems, I want my legacy to be like, man, you know what? The old man got through this and they didn't quit, and their marriage was hitting some rough spots. I want that to be what they see. Like, even though it sucks, even though it's hard, the old man didn't quit. I'm sticking into this marriage. I'm sticking into this career, whatever the case may be. So maybe more along the lines, it's like, things suck, stick to it. And then on top of that, reach out to people that you love, because we're selfish in terms of the go-getter, pushing it. People rely on you, and I just want to be known for that guy that was like, maybe set a different stage of like, hey, let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about being screwed up. Let's talk about having trouble in our marriage. Let's talk about coming home from work and taking stuff out on our kids and the personality differences. Let's talk about those hard things, because if you don't, you're not going to fix it. That's what I want my legacy to be more than anything. As cheesy as it may sound, or maybe kind of like mainstream, like let's have the hard conversations. And, you know, I heard Rogan say, you get two people that come to the table and listen to each other, there's really nothing you can't fix. That's absolutely true. And I want to be known for that, I guess, more than anything, is just somebody that, hey, I saw what he went through, I can do it too. He left that like, it's okay to be screwed up and not put on a fake, false narrative that everything's always cool, but still forged ahead and made something of himself. Pretty simple dude, man.
No, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. So I want to strike it home, 180impact@gmail.com.
Yeah, if you want to email me, that's the best way. I don't, so far I'm not a big techie guy. I got a son that does all that stuff. Maybe one day he'll work for me, but it's just Gmail, the 180 impact, the word impact @gmail.com. Reach out to me. I'll come. I like talk to group. I've talked to all kinds of groups, man. I've done Lions Club, Optimist Club, and gone to churches. I've done chapels, and I just like to talk. I like to, obviously, God's changed this for me to share my story, and it is rewarding now that I'm not a cop and running from call to call to call to call, to take the time and to share with people and to honestly help them is what my calling is. So reach out to me, and if it's one-on-one coaching, I always say, man, I'll hook you up for 15, 20 minutes. We'll have a face-to-face and a very, very honest conversation. Like, this is what I do in coaching. This is what I can't do. And so I love sitting down and helping dudes out one-on-one, because in a one-on-one setting, you can peel more of that onion back on them and hold them accountable. Say, now it's time for the hard work, man. We're warriors. This is what you got to do.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Absolutely
everything that you're doing. I mean, I got a lot from this, man. Not just the breathing, but, like I said, so many different areas of my life that resonate with that. It's like, I honestly, there's, when you were talking about your story about when they came and took your badge and your gun, and it's you in that room by yourself with that gun. I mean, I've been in that exact same scenario, just a different scenario.
Right.
And
it's all relatable, right? We all have our own stories, and it's just like, I just happen to be given this platform of like, hey, look, I was super cop, and I did some things that not many people get to do in that realm. Like, I can now come back and go, hey, I was an FBI trained sniper. I've trained with Navy SEALs. I've done all of this cool stuff, and so that gives me maybe somewhat of a platform to go, but I wasn't a sweet dad all the time. I wasn't really taking time for myself. I wasn't doing a lot of these things that really mattered, and I broke. And we all go through that at different levels. So really, like, your story's my story, is everybody else's story. It's just like mine's sensational, because the life of a cop is very entertaining to people.
Yeah.
Because that's why it's still on TV 16 times episodes a week. So yeah, that's why the platform I've been given, never wanted to, never had any expectation. I don't like the limelight, but I don't make that decision. God does, and that's what I got to do with it, as hard as it is.
I truly feel like, God put it on my heart to do this podcast. I still tell Connor, like, little things like I still feel cringy and awkward with,
it's hard.
But at the same time, it's been on my heart for a while to do it. And I feel like, my prayer on this is that we sit down, we talk, somebody's watching this podcast for another reason.
Yeah.
And then here's this, and it's like, wow, like, they could be a cop or first responder, or maybe not even that, because like I said, it really,
Your average Joe.
It absolutely transcends to all people. So I thank you so much for your openness, and it's a little bit funny to me, because again, we didn't know each other before this. Was I only had I'd see you at the gym or see you around. It's funny because you come off as maybe not being the most approachable guy just by how you look.
Yeah,
like
I'm not. That's by design.
But which I think is amazing and makes it even where it would. I feel like it's that much more impactful.
Yeah.
What you have to offer in this environment of offering that to you. So I commend you and appreciate you for coming out and giving all this information, this knowledge, your wisdom, your experience, the things you went through in life. Because I think that's what makes the difference. I think if it weren't what you're talking about with God, I think the reason why is because it's you, because of your background, because of even just the way you look, and someone who's battling that, and then you come out and you say, hey man, like this is me.
Yeah.
That's what breaks that.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's one thing that helped me, like when I transitioned out of police work, just to wrap this up, is that a guy that had a podcast on, he was a Marine Raider, which is the Marine Corps Special Forces. They were the precursors or after the Force Recon guys, high speed. I met him down at the Arnold Classic a few years ago, and he started podcasting all this stuff. When he started talking about it, I'm like, man, this dude was, the Marine of all Marines and went to war and combat and lost buddies, and he's talking about this stuff. Like, that opens doors. Like, okay, cool. I have a platform. I can talk about it too. So I know I seem unapproachable sometimes. After 26 years of marriage, everybody's like, you walk around with a scowl on your face. And I'm like, because I had somebody at work was like, me and my buddy do the peer support stuff. And they're like, well, Tyler's just, this is a good buddy of mine. He's like, Tyler's a lot more approachable than you are. And I'm like, really? And you like, yeah, you kind of walk around with that gruff. And I go, when you're married for 26 years, you have that look because you're walking around most of the time like, you're naturally like, what? What's going on?
What did I do
so
wrong?
It comes across as like, what? So yeah, I'm really laid back person. I've always kind of maybe carried that mantra, but I mean nothing by it. So maybe it's a protective mechanism. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. That's I actually love that about you, about, that way, that perception of it. I make funny cop jokes or things, my perception of you, which always makes Connor really laugh because
he knows. Yeah, he knows.
So
he's been through it with me.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a good boy.
He is. I appreciate him very much.
We'll do this again, man.
Yeah, I would love that.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know how much time we spent here, but I'm literally scratching the surface.
I feel like, so I skipped over probably 8-10 questions.
Yeah.
I had like 27 questions for you, and
no worries.
I was like, but honestly, like, I mean, there's so much here. I think that honestly, we could do a podcast just on the breathing or just on
for sure.
exercise or it's like that. So I hope that we can do this again.
Absolutely.
And expand on this because I feel like what you are bringing to the table is so valuable.
Yeah.
For so many people. And I think that's me personally. There's so many things that I held in my job. I was supposed to be happy-go-lucky, and my wife sent me. The only time she's ever done this, she sent me this podcast. She said, "I need you to watch this right now," and I'm like, okay. It's like an hour long. And it was, I believe, a Switch from the Ellen DeGeneres show. I think that was his name. He was the DJ for Ellen.
The guy that committed
show.
Suicide, right?
Committed suicide, and it's his wife. I'm trying to think which podcast it was on. It was his wife, and she was saying that he was an introverted extrovert, and so he'd just pour all this out to everybody in his job, and everybody thought he was just this guy, and then he'd come home and he'd just say like, I just need my space. I'm done. Yeah. And I listened to it for like 5 minutes, not even maybe 5 minutes. He just started talking about, and I was bawling my eyes out. And I literally texted her and said, "You're awful. Why would you make me listen to this?" But that truly was like a game changer. And I never reach out to celebrities or anything like that. And I had to write her and just say like, thank you so much for coming on here and telling your husband's story. Because when she was talking about him, I've been there before, and I felt like it would be like my wife telling my story. Yeah. And it truly probably saved me, and I've shared that podcast with other people who I feel like could relate with that. And, and so, and maybe when she did that podcast, she wasn't even thinking that would be the effect that it would have.
Right. You never know what it's going to be.
You never know who's going to listen to it, no matter what's going to be affected by it. And, so I was so thankful for her to send that to me. And I think that it's in today's culture, our environment, because we're so detached from real life in a lot of ways, with social media, with all of the different things, that I feel like there's, these types of coping mechanisms and identifying these things in ourself. Yeah. Because that's what's so crazy. We get so, and I love what you're saying about like when you're talking about that of like with yourself, you're just go. And all of these things are they're taking like little nicks, that
for sure.
And eventually it's like this big divot that's in you, and you can't identify it until it's almost sometimes for some people it's too late.
For sure.
Or you're already, deep.
You're beyond. You're in an addiction or extremely bad habit or so on and so forth, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So no, man, I appreciate
We'll hook it
so
up
much.
again, man. We'll have to we'll knock this down to 1 or 2 topics, and then we'll go down the rabbit hole on that, because then people are gonna be like, "What? All right, man. This is what they're talking about today. Make sure they stay on that, and we can talk about all of it, dude. I mean, maybe this is something to go forward. I've recently been picked up, getting back into not back into my faith, but like, all right, man, with everything going on around us, our walk with Christ and what that looks like. And like, I'm tired, and I got these boys, like, I'm not the Hillsong, Bethel, like, and I've listened to some podcasts of some dudes like, we've lost our way in the church, and Jesus isn't this, fair-skinned, Dutch-looking, blonde-haired dude. He's a warrior. And, like, what does that mean? I'm, like, really getting hooked into that. And it's deepening my faith because, again, there's other guys out there that, they might throw a dip in once in a while, drink a beer and kick back, but very scripturally based and getting back to, like, what biblical manhood is. And so I'm like, man, maybe this is something that's being kicked around, too, and you never know. But sky's the limit, man. I say you just walk out there and go for it.
No,
Yeah,
appreciate
man.
that.
All right. Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for watching this podcast. It's been Real with Ray. Look forward to getting your feedback on this. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you think. Any questions you have for myself, for Aaron. I appreciate again so much him taking his time. And make sure you check out his podcast, The 180 Impact. If you have any concerns and want to reach out to him, make sure you reach out to that email. 180, the numbers, impact, IMPACT, @gmail.com. So thank you so much again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Real with Ray podcast. Please like and subscribe, share it with a friend, and give us your feedback. What did you think of the podcast? If you've got any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out and make sure you tune in to the next episode. Let's go!